to another edition of Wright Stew. We're back in we'll call it the studio, my home office. A lot going on here.
This is awesome, by the way. Yeah.
But we do have our Christmas Santa right here. So Santa's ready to play some baseball. And so we're excited to be back tonight with you guys. So again, Paul Stewart.
Brian Wright.
And together we're the Wright Stew.
That's right.
And today we're going to talk about our draft stories. So both Brian and I played professionally, but we're going to talk through some different things. What the draft was like, and leading up to that, what it was like to be a T-baller, little leaguer, high schooler, some of those things, what it meant to develop work ethic over that time, and then share some stories along the way.
Yeah, and I think obviously the thing, obviously is we've experienced it back in the day, and ultimately how much it's changed today, right? And as far as the things that people look for ultimately are still the same, right? You want somebody that you can eventually project to be a productive professional, or whether it be big leaguer or whatever they're looking for you to do. But, then it was so different than now,
wildly
right?
different, yeah.
I mean, when you think about how you got started, Paul, or when did you realize that, hey, I'm a little bit better, or not to be arrogant, but hey, there's a little bit,
not to be a jerk, but like legitimately T-ball. I was 6 years old, and the way our league worked, the best batter batted last because you could kind of knock everybody around, and you just kept running. So you kind of get to put the kid last who could hit it to the outfield, and you just.
So that's what they told you. That's what they told you. So you hit last.
So I was like, well,
you're the best player. You're going to hit last.
Yeah, so like legitimate team, I knew I was good. I could.
But you could, even then, you felt like you could tell a difference. Like, hey, I'm again, not to be arrogant, but
yeah,
hey, I'm a little bit better than these guys.
6, 7, and I guess 6 or 7 is when you started T-ball. Now they've got kids starting at like 3 and 4, which is crazy. But 6, 7 years old, T-ball was really good.
Yeah, I
could catch the ball like a normal person.
Yeah,
I played first base because I was the only one that could really catch.
Yeah.
The next year for me was they called it C-ball. It was a pitching machine.
Yeah,
and if we played 12 games, I hit 12 home runs, sort of thing. I actually used a wood bat.
Oh wow. Yeah,
it was,
yeah. You're definitely different.
Yeah.
I mean, were y'all playing on 180-foot fields?
That one did not have a fence.
Okay.
So you
hit it.
Once you hit it past the outfield, you're
hitting a home run. Yeah.
So then the next year, there was kind of the league all the other kids went to my age.
Mm-hmm.
I skipped that. I was 9 years old playing with like 12-year-olds.
Oh wow.
And this is when we were still living in Virginia. And
baseball wasn't as good as
Northern Virginia.
No. I'm joking, obviously.
So I was 9, playing shortstop with 12-year-olds.
Oh yeah. Were you big relative to your age?
I was always bigger. Yeah. I was always on the bigger side. But when I was playing with 12-year-olds, I looked like a smallish kid. Yeah. So even then I was like, and I held my own. I batted second on the team. So I was put the ball in play, sort of thing, and then.
Pitching wise, obviously that's eventually what you did. Were you pitching at 9 years old against 11 and 12-year-olds?
So that year I pitched one scrimmage game at 9 years old. I remember it vividly.
Wow.
It was our team was the Expos.
Perfect.
And we played against the Rangers in a scrimmage, and I gave up the house.
Well, yeah, it makes sense. Because you think about now, if we had a 9-year-old versus our boys just come off of the 12U stuff.
Yeah.
A 9-year-old versus what our team is.
Yeah.
Right. It would get
There's
destroyed.
No
yeah.
So I remember hitting around. I was like, this is awful. I never want to do this again. So I didn't pitch it all that year. Then the next year we moved to North Carolina, and so I was 10 years old playing with 10-year-olds, and I pitched and
had success
and did really well, and then kind of pitched ever since. But growing up, nobody wants to be a pitcher. Like nobody goes in the backyard and says, bottom of the ninth, bases loaded, strike 3. Maybe they do now.
I think people did. You think about like Nolan Ryan and some of the guys who were the big time pitchers back then. Doc Gooden and some of those guys back in the late 90s or late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
But so that wasn't. You didn't see yourself.
No, I wanted to be a baseball player. Like I loved hitting. When I pitched, I liked pitching. I played shortstop up until I was in high school, basically, and loved that. So just good overall athlete.
Yeah.
Watched a ton of baseball, loved it. truly my passion. Same question for you. When did you realize?
Hey, well, we started. I can remember this. I have an older brother, and like I was getting ready to turn 6, the spring of '86, right? So I was obviously getting ready to be 44, or getting ready to be 45 next year. And my dad was one of these guys who was like, "Hey, if you're going to do it, you're going to be as good as you can be at it."
Okay.
So actually, I hadn't showed a lot of interest. Like my brother was just a play guy. I played with him in the yard,
Yeah.
and so really, even at 6, 7 years old, I was a good player, but I definitely wasn't the best player because really I'd only picked up a true bat and a true learning how to catch it probably 6 months before actually the season started. Right?
Oh wow.
And so again, we had played wiffle ball, we played in the backyard, and we'd done things, but like as far as organized, I hadn't even really done any of that stuff. And so I would say, 7 years old, one of the better players. 8 years old, obviously we're still doing coach pitch and stuff like that. One of the better players, if not the best player. But we had for a small community town like we were, Big Ramsor, North Carolina, shout out. Dude, we had had a lot of talent, right?
Yeah.
And it felt like, there just wasn't as many options for kids to do, right? It was still in the time where if you were, a young American boy, baseball was something that you at least tried.
Yeah.
And so there was had really good competitive teams. And then I'd say by 11 or 12 years old, really definitely by 12 years old, starting to separate, but there was still a handful of guys that I would have said, even in that small little community, that were better than me.
Oh wow.
And so it wasn't like I never thought it was head and shoulders. I was better. I feel like the jump really took for me was from 12 to 15. 12 to really my freshman year, so 14 maybe, where it was, hey, I'm almost as good, or there's a couple guys that are probably better than me in this area. And then from, 6th grade to 9th grade, I'd kind of taken that step forward. And then I was one of the better young players, played varsity as a freshman, that sort of thing. And,
big time.
Well, again, small town stuff, but it was, that's when I felt like, all right, I have a chance to kind of do something maybe a little bit different.
Yeah, I played JV my freshman year, and so I was at Garner High School, a 4A school, bigger school in North Carolina. So freshman year, we had a solid team. My freshman year, the varsity team did really well, and I got called up for the playoffs. So played one. Yeah, I didn't play. I sat the bench for one game, but
you were there.
Watched us. Yeah, we lost to Richmond County.
Really good base.
And then I remember my sophomore year, we were at tryouts, and they were kind of splitting. I varsity on the right field line, JV on the left field line, and I just started walking towards the JV side. And the head coach was like, it was me and my best friend TJ. He goes, Stuart, Nelson. And he called us, and he kind of waited, and we're like, we look at each other, like, dang, we did it, man. And so we walked over to the varsity, and 3 years of varsity. So that was.
So tell me this: when did you start? Like, were you doing any kind of working out or any kind of throwing program? Or
so
anything?
you mentioned playing with your friends in the yard, that sort of thing. I played a ton of wiffle ball in the backyard growing up. Our house was the house to be at. We played all summer long. And none of the kids in my neighborhood played baseball. But like you mentioned, that was just kind of what you did back then. Then you played wiffle ball in the summer, then it rolled into football in the fall, then in the winter you played basketball.
That's right.
And so I played a ton of, to the point, and we were talking about this earlier, I was a huge stat rat, just a nerd, baseball nerd. I made everybody in the yard remember their stats for the game. And then after the game, I told them I would write them down, and I had the old Apple IIe.
Oh, God.
And so it's kind of my two things, that like technology and baseball.
Yeah.
And I had this old program, some sort of primitive word.
Yeah.
And I would type in everybody's stats, and I saved it on the old school floppy disk. And I had the games played, at bats, home runs, RBI. They probably, looking back, they probably hated me. But
you were definitely the nerd, even though you're probably obviously one of the better players or the best player out there.
Well, in the neighborhood, certainly, I was playing with the Page brothers
still,
and Brad Vaughan.
Right. But still, they're like, dude, I'm not giving Paul my stats. Or, I mean, who's deciding whether this is an error or a hit?
Yeah. I was the ultimate judge, because I think back then I remember I probably knew what 90% of the game was. It was like, no, you were
No, that was an error. That was not a hit. You're
E5,
1 for
clearly.
3,
Yeah.
right? You're
So,
not 2 for 3.
but it was a wiffle ball game, so we had like 20 at bats or something stupid. So
That's right.
So to answer your question, from working out, like
from formerly,
from getting into the gym,
yeah,
man, really honestly not till pro baseball.
Wow.
I did it a few
incredible.
times. We went to the field house and worked out a couple times,
but it was nothing that was building over time.
There was no YouTube. There was nothing where I could be like, hey, let's develop a workout plan. Let's go online and find the stuff that our kids and the travel ball kids and the high school kids have resource and access to now.
Yeah,
light years beyond anything we could have had.
Yeah.
There was no industry. There was not an industry.
I kind of think it was starting though. Like, I'll say this.
Very, very early.
Even in the sewer, like my dad had bought a batting cage. And so I kind of grew up with a place to hit all the time. And we would have guys that would come through and do like hitting lessons like people do. And a lot of minor leaguers
in your
would come
backyard?
back. And it wasn't in our backyard, but it was in our little town, right? It was an old grocery store that they converted and put 4 or 5 cages in.
That's awesome.
And so I saw some really, there was always debates. Even like there's the debates now as far as this launch angle. Whether you get here or how do you get to the ball.
You guys were early launch angle?
No. But there was a debate on like, are you a rotational guy where you're kind of mashing the bug, or are you a heel over toe guy? So there was that debate, right? But and linear versus rotational, I think was the terms that were thrown around a lot then. But so I did hit a lot. And I think that probably, and it was just natural, right? You go up there, you would kind of work, right? You're always picking up balls for other people or somebody's doing lessons. And so I was hitting a lot. And I had an older brother, and he was trying to get recruited. And so I probably started lifting 8th, 9th grade pretty regularly.
Oh, wow.
The thing I think I probably didn't do as well on that people do much better now is they were always to lift in season. I was always lifting out of season. And I'd lift through football, but then those, 4 or 5 months during baseball season, I didn't lift. And so I think you probably, I don't know how much you really gained from that, but you definitely didn't do what you could have. Yeah.
It's something, yeah.
So yeah, it's
so
interesting.
you mentioned football. So let's talk about that. What are your thoughts? So what are your thoughts growing up?
Yeah.
Other sports? What are your thoughts now playing other sports?
Well, I think it's
what I mean specifically is,
how does it help you long term?
Does it help you, or because we see a lot, we hear a lot. So Brian and I coach a travel team. We encourage our young men to play basketball, play football, wrestle, run track, do something else.
That's right.
I played basketball. You played football.
Yep.
Did you do any other sport?
No, I wasn't really good enough to play basketball high school wise.
Okay.
So I
you probably could have.
Well, I don't know, dude. I mean, in my mind, and maybe it's maybe I could have got on the team, but I wouldn't have contributed, if that makes sense.
That's fair, yeah. So what position did you play in football?
So football, outside linebacker and running back, and I definitely wasn't the best player.
Yeah.
Definitely from those time frames, I had letters from decent schools.
There
So I
we
could have
go.
went and played, collegiate football, but letters and actual offers are two different things. But I had some letters from some pretty nice schools, but it was I would say the crossover is as much physical as it is mental. I think, first of all, baseball is a grinding game. I think it's the reason it's so hard to play a long season and be consistent over a long period of time. But from a athlete standpoint, there's no question that you train different things and ultimately become a better athlete. And all the guys that are in the big leagues, with a few exceptions, are really good athletes. Not only are they really skilled, right? I think the idea is you have this window to become a good athlete, which is really relatively small, like without really training. And I've heard different things, whether it be like up to age 12 or maybe it's up to age 14, like your athletic base is being set.
Yeah. Or you're developing.
Yeah. And then after that, it's much more difficult to add, quote unquote, to become a better athlete. You can obviously mature and physically mature, but your window is relatively small to develop those motor skills.
Yeah. And the word athlete is interesting too, because you said, hey, what the definition of an athlete is different. So you say,
how would you define it?
Is it decathlon? Is it Can you hit a baseball?
No, I would say that's not.
I mean, that's not being an athlete. That's just like
that's a skill.
I don't. That's I can't get into that. That's a whole different thing.
Well, maybe, but I would say when I think about athletes, somebody who quick first step, right,
Yeah.
can run fast and can create rotational forces, right? Whether it be throwing, tackling, that first step. Obviously, you see in basketball, you see it in football, you see it.
Baseball. You see
Every sport. Baseball, you
tennis,
need that. Yeah. That you need that first step and it's an indication of being explosive. It's an indication if you're powerful, and so I think that's kind of it. But yeah, so we were doing
there's a lot of
those
different
things.
paths you can go down there for being an athlete for sure. So that's interesting. So similarly, like I played basketball, but I was such a baseball nerd. I played 1 year of so in my hometown we called it Optimist basketball. So it was rec league.
Like rec league, yeah.
I played when I was 12 years old. I was probably close to 6 foot at the time.
Yeah.
And did pretty well. Was pretty athletic, could move up and down a little bit, and it was tall, so it made it a little easier. Made sense for basketball. Didn't try out at all in middle school.
Didn't play.
Didn't play at all in middle school. And what's really crazy is the basketball coach was my teacher 1 year. And I'm like, dude, you got this 6 foot kid walking. How did he not
ask you?
I don't remember him asking me.
Yeah. Maybe he's like, hey, maybe he's a baseball nerd.
Maybe I don't know.
I see him write down stats.
I see the scores he's making on these tests. He probably doesn't.
We don't really need him.
He can't figure this offense out. Yeah. So, but that was so 9th grade didn't try out, and then 10th grade, the basketball coach was my history teacher.
Yeah.
He comes up to me one day and we're in class. He goes, "Hey, son, you trying out for basketball this year?" I was like, "Nah, I hadn't thought about it. Not planning on it." He's like, "No, I'm not asking you. I'm telling you, you're trying out for basketball this year."
Awesome.
And I was like, "Oh, all right, well, here we go." So tryouts, a couple weeks later or whatever, and I'd never played real organized basketball. So I get to try. Literally have a baseball hat on. I wore a hat to school every day.
Yeah.
So I had my hat on, and the coach was like, "Son, it's not the baseball field. Get that hat." So I throw the hat off to the side.
Do you have sneakers? Were you wearing like
I
short
had
shorts?
like high tops on. I had high tops on.
You
No, that was the era.
Sweatpants?
That was the era of baggy, like longer shorts. I had long shorts, regular basketball. So, but the guys on the team were basketball guys,
right?
And they're out there running a pretty basic motion offense, pass, screen away.
Yeah. And
then the next 5 hop on and you run through. Then you're doing stuff like that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'll never figure this out. And so I'm like, and that's why sometimes it frustrates us when our kids are not paying attention. So I sat in the last in the line because I wanted to see.
Which makes sense, which is what smart people do.
And
kids.
then, so I got it and caught on. Made the JV team in 10th grade. Started, again, I was 6'4" probably at the time. So looking back, it's like, So started the whole time in 10th grade. We had a really good team. We did really well. 9th grade, I was kind of like the 7th or 8th guy. And that 11th grade was 7th or 8th guy, and then 12th grade started as a senior and all conference. And
so when did you obviously it's every kid's dream and or at least that plays baseball that like, hey, I want to get drafted, I want to have a chance to go make it to the big leagues. When was that kind of like, hey, I'm a little bit better, or I'm better than a lot of the other kids I'm facing, I feel like I've got a chance to maybe take this step forward? And how did that work, or when did you realize that? What grade were you in?
I think probably in 11th grade it was maybe a thought.
Yeah.
I had committed to play at NC State.
Well, so it had to be before then. When did you start getting interest from like colleges? Right, it was
so college was 10th grade.
So
10th grade. So I started getting letters from NC State and a few others. Mm-hmm. So as it happens, my brother-in-law now was my pitching coach in 10th grade. He pitched at NC State.
So he
saw me throw a bullpen.
And he's like, yeah, this guy.
And he called Coach Tanner and was like, hey, you need to watch this guy.
Yeah.
And so, very fortunate. I think probably would have happened. Probably would have taken a little longer, right?
Yeah.
But so by 10th grade, I was already getting letters and stuff like that from NC State. So when your first letters from NC State, you're like, okay, I'm doing okay.
And that's I would say that's probably the exception. But you were physically.
I was 6'4".
So you were already 6'4", obviously closer to 6'6", 6'7" now.
Yeah, but so probably in 11th grade, I committed to NC State.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, I'm going to NC State. Yeah. I'll go play 3 years and then get drafted. That's kind of how it worked. And then in 12th grade, at the beginning of the school year, scouts started, like professional scouts, started calling the house. There were there were some at some Legion games the year before, but
You
we
see
had a
those
couple,
big guns come up.
but we had
and
a
you're
couple
like,
kids on the Legion team that were a little old, maybe. And then, but 12th grade they started coming. In the winter they were, coming to our house, visiting with my parents, and some of that was like, is this kid a nutball? Like who?
right, 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 right.
What's the family like? We're about to invest some money in this kid potentially. Let's make sure he's not crazy.
So they give you any kind of psychological analysis to to make sure. I can remember doing one. I can't remember any questions, and that mine was later, obviously after college. But I can't remember. But I remember there was. I don't remember some questions. I'm sure I answered crazy. So anyway, can you remember any questions that stood out to make sure
Yeah,
you
so
weren't
we
a
had
nutbag? Yeah,
we had the one where I remember doing it at school too, on one of those black science tables that are on every science classroom.
that's right.
But it was the twins, and it was if you're walking down the street, and on one side is a man painting a picture, and on the other side is two kids fighting. Which one are you going to watch?
Right.
And I put on the test the guy painting because I didn't want to seem like a psycho.
But
100
they
out of 100.
knew 100% that was a lie.
Yeah.
But also maybe the right answer, right? They knew you were going. Because
Yeah.
if you would have said the kid's fighting,
Like, get this guy out of here.
but also I wonder how that stuff was evaluated then and how much it's changed now. But yeah, so that's
Yeah.
hilarious.
So that was so, and then I remember our basketball team, our senior year was pretty good. We got to the third round of the playoffs, lost Friday night, and I think it was the following Monday we had a baseball game because it kind of bled
It
over.
bled right over.
And then
yeah.
I pitched game one.
So talk
And,
about
and there was like 3 or 4 scouts there, pro scouts, and I hit 90 on the first day, and so I was like, oh, we're good.
So talk about, and obviously the game's changed now, but talk about, did you have any idea your velocity in 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade? Were you at 75 in 8th grade? Were you at 80 in 8th grade? Do you have any kind of feel for where you were at as far as?
I know I hit, the first time I remember, like, hitting 90 was my 11, in junior year, I want to say. I hit 90 because so I played for a summer ball team. We were down in Atlanta playing a tournament, and guns, scouts. We had an unbelievably talented team. There's scouts everywhere. I remember hitting 90 there as like a 16-year-old.
Right.
Because
you were a young junior.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I was super young. But I don't remember, because the kids asked me, I was like, how hard were you throwing when you were in 8th grade? I'm like, hard enough to strike out probably 2 out of 3 guys an inning. Like,
and
hard
obviously
enough
you moved back to 60 feet.
Yeah.
None of this in between
and
stuff.
But again, I was tall. Like when I was 12, Josh was like, how hard were you throwing? I was like, I struck out like 14 every game and literally,
So you feel like
so it was hard. It was hard.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was.
I was just curious if you had a.
No, I don't know exact speed. But again, it was hard enough where I was.
So when you played as a
striking out
sophomore, were you pretty dominant as a?
So I made all conference as a sophomore in a fairly big 4A conference. Threw really well. I think I started as like, hey, you're going to be the number 3 guy probably in this rotation. And then the first game I pitched that year, I threw like 4 or 5 innings and struck out like 10 guys or something. And then it's like, oh, okay,
well, maybe you're the number 2 guy.
Maybe you're number 2. And then a couple weeks, weeks go by, maybe you are, yeah. So, but again, we had a decent team that year, but got some chances, and when I got on the mound, performed in the right situations.
Were you throwing? Do you remember like growing up? Like when did you start thinking about off speed, breaking balls? Obviously, you were physically dominating.
Yeah.
So was there ever a time that you went here, change up, splitty, whatever?
No. So I learned a forkball in 10th grade.
So, but up until that point, you didn't throw anything other than
my dad
fastball.
would always mess around. He was like, "Hey, let's work on a changeup." I'm like, all right, well, my dad, he must know. So I threw a changeup. I was like, that's just a slow fastball. That's stupid. Why would I? And it almost hindered me because my fastball was. So I mean, to answer your question about I just threw fastballs.
So
by
you
people.
threw fastballs really from age
I probably
9 to 14 or
14, 15. I probably threw like a garbage, something to spin up there. And then once I started throwing the forkball, anytime it was 0-2, I'm like, just yanking that thing off.
Gotcha.
But really never needed to throw one. Just threw fastballs, and it was fine. And I think that probably helped with my location because I was so
for sure. And it obviously helped with arm development, and never really had arm pain. Never really dealt with any of the stuff that a lot of people deal with, especially now. There's not a year that we coach that either don't personally have an issue with a kid having an arm issue, or see it on the other side, and Tommy John and all kinds of crazy things that are happening really early now that were unheard of when we came through. And I'm always curious, there's some people say that is not really the impact, it's everything else. And so anyway.
So what were some of the first kind of letters you remember getting from different colleges for baseball?
My parents, obviously, they gave me some stuff, and I was looking back through, and I can remember filling out, or my parents filled out, like, schools that I'm interested in. And I don't know if this was going to...
It's going to your guidance counselor.
No. I don't know if it was going to, like... It felt like it was going out to maybe one of these, like, showcase event type things.
Yeah.
And because I think I don't know what it was going to, but it was very mid-major stuff. My brother went to Liberty University, and I don't want to say he had to beg his way on, but we were a small town, small community. It wasn't like there was a bunch of examples of what you had to do, right? Or what these margins, like now you kind of know you got to get to this extra velocity, you got to do this, and this. That wasn't really that out there. And so it was a lot of mid-tier stuff.
So you were setting the expectations.
Yeah, my expectation was to go play at hopefully a D1, but I wasn't above D2 or D3. So the expectations really were, a mid D1 type school. Mid-major type school. And it wasn't, I don't remember, I think William and Mary may have been one.
Yeah.
I think maybe like a VCU. And again, good schools, but just, they weren't on the level that I ended up playing.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the original. And then I had a really good junior year. Went to some showcase camps. And then I went to prospect days, and I really performed in those. And off of guys who were getting recruited already.
So you showed out when you needed to show out.
Yeah. And so hit a couple home runs, really played well. They knew I played infield just like you my whole life. Yeah. They realized that I wasn't an infielder. I didn't realize it yet, but
they saw your hands. They saw your hands before you saw.
Yeah, they saw my hands and feet work together. Like, yeah, he's not an infielder at this level. And so anyway, ended up getting offered from NC State my junior year, and and then I signed pretty quickly after. I was kind of starstruck from the. I knew what they were. I had offers from other schools as well, and some later rivals in, and people maybe even offered a little bit more percentage-wise. But it was never really, I don't know. It was, looking back now, it's a really awesome kind of experience to remember.
Yeah, oh yeah.
In the moment, though, you don't really appreciate it, right? It's just kind of, it's just what you do.
Not even close.
Yeah. You think about, kind of being really, really good at something and being able to perform and do it, very often. As an adult, it would be so awesome to go back.
Well, you think about your kids now. You think about your kids.
Yeah.
Like, so we both have sons. I was playing travel baseball. I have daughters playing college softball. You have a daughter playing lacrosse and does dance. But speaking specifically about baseball, but our girls were so proud of them for doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
Our sons, if they got the chance to do what we
did,
it'd be awesome. It would be amazing.
Yeah, it'd be awesome if they were in that position, right? And so in the moment, you don't really appreciate it.
No.
And so I can remember, so speaking of, first time I ever hurt my arm badly was a junior going to one of these showcase games.
Trying to show out.
Yeah, and they're trying to show out, and they stuck me in the outfield, and I'm throwing from the outfield. Josh Hamilton is there as well, so he's obviously a year younger.
Yeah.
But, he was a standard. And so you've heard about this kid, and obviously he was special, big feet.
He was pretty good.
Yeah,
he was okay.
Even at 14, 15 years old, you could tell the ball comes off his bat differently.
He was a freshman my senior year.
Okay.
And I remember, Garner Legion played Fuquay Legion.
And he played for Fuquay.
He was batting 3-hole as a freshman.
Right.
And I did pretty well against him, but he was young, right?
Right.
And I've gotten to know Josh over the years. Love him, but but
it was different. He was different. It was different, right?
So you're at the showcase camp.
Showcase camp, we're throwing from the outfield the first time. I'm trying to show out my first one. Snap throw, center. You throw from center field to third base. Good throw. Second one, really good throw. third one I hear snap, snap, snap in my elbow. And I think, oh my gosh, and I don't say anything. I'm one of these kids who thinks I can play through everything. I throw another one, dude, and it looks like a beach ball going to third base. And I've got shooting pain all down my hand and elbow, and I'm like, dude, and so I don't say anything. But my elbow is killing me.
Yeah.
So I play third base. I can barely get it to first base. I hit terribly because you can't extend with your. I'm a left-handed hitter. You can't extend. And I think we may have been using wood, but I wasn't that bad a player. I was just, my elbow was done.
Yeah,
so we go see a specialist. Bad doctor told me I had tendonitis.
Oh, jeez.
Didn't learn until much later, till I was in college, when I eventually had surgery that it actually sheared bone off of my elbow. And that's calcified. Had calcified in there and created basically just bone on bone in my elbow. Ooh. And so didn't learn about any of those things until much later. And so before my junior year, I'd had like an advisor come and be like, hey, they're projecting you like 7th to 15th round as a high school kid. So they come and talk to me, and I was filling out a lot of those things as well. So I had signed and I performed, and even though I'd had some bad events and people didn't really know that I was hurt. And then my senior year, my numbers went down. But they were still decent numbers.
Good, yeah. Your numbers going down, you're still hitting 450.
Yeah, I think I still hit 500, still hit 5 or 6 home runs. But the year before, I'd hit like 530 with 12 home runs, and
they didn't know.
And I'd faced some really good. And I'm sure like you guys, but I faced a couple guys who went to North Carolina. I faced a guy who went to some, it was pretty decent competition that we were facing. And so anyway, I was never right. After that, honestly, I was never able to get through the ball the same way I was as a junior in high school, right? Everything else was an adjustment.
All downhill.
It was truly downhill from I had some really good collegiate years, but as far as health-wise, because it messes with you, I think that's eventually why I hurt my back.
Well, then it changes your swing. You're trying to compensate for
you're trying to create more torque with your back instead of it being able to extend through the ball.
Yeah. So you were projected potentially 7th to 15th out of high school.
Yes.
Did you get drafted out of high school? I
didn't get drafted at all. So
was it because you were committed to state, or?
No, I really don't think. I really think you probably could tell when they really started looking at me. I didn't. I wasn't continuing to project better.
Gotcha.
Right? You don't want to see guys take a step backwards.
No. Yeah.
If I hit 614 home runs,
or stay the same.
Or stay the same. That may have been something that would happen. But my velocity on the mound, I was not a pitcher, but went from, I think as a junior, I was 86 to 88, and as a senior, I was 81 to 83. So big velocity fall off. And again, then nobody was projecting me as a pitcher, but they knew, like, dude, why's this guy going backwards?
Yeah.
But fortunately, was able to still get to NC State, still have a good career. But yeah, through high school, it was. But again, you looking back at those situations, it was so surreal. I mean, it just, I mean,
so I had a chance to get up to AAA for one full season and parts of a couple others, and at the time you're like, oh, this is just what everybody does.
Right. This is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Who doesn't play AAA? Right. Everybody I know is playing AAA.
That's right, because they're right here in the clubhouse.
Yeah, but that's your circle.
They're right on your wall. Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing with getting drafted. Is like,
who doesn't get drafted? Yeah, but you were a second rounder, right?
No, sixth
rounder. So you're sixth rounder.
So back to had a good senior year.
You think you're going to get drafted?
So I know I'm getting drafted after about the second or third game my senior year that I picked, because all the pro scouts are there, letters all the time in the mail. There's like,
were you filling out those little cards?
Please send me your schedule. I want to know. To the point where my head baseball coach, they were calling him, right? So this is when you still called your baseball coach in high school. They were calling him. His outgoing message was, hey, this is the Maltby residence. Leave a message for me. If you're calling about Paul Stewart, he is pitching on Friday. Legitimately, that was his outgoing message, because he was getting so many calls from scouts.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
So my senior year, so we were playing Cary High School. So we talked about our big rival.
Yeah.
Hate Cary. Hated him so much.
Yeah.
Just wanted to beat him. So every time. So my senior year, we're playing them. And so your daughter just actually had won this award. The Tom Stewart, so she was being a great scholar athlete. So really, so they did ABC, the local ABC WTVD did a similar story on me. So I knew they were coming out.
Oh yeah.
And so I remember I was trying to get a haircut, so I looked good when I was on TV.
Of course. Of course.
But the lady that cut my hair couldn't do it, so I had longer hair than I wanted. So they're coming out against Cary High School. So I'm already even more amped up, right?
Yeah.
So we get to the game, and legitimately every team had a scout at the game.
So you knew.
And so Cary also had a guy on the other side, Paul Wilder.
Oh yeah.
Who ended up being, I'll tell you about this. He ended up being a first round pick our year. But we both committed to state. We played against each other probably since we were 13, 14 years old.
Wow.
So this game was at our place.
Yeah.
I threw 8 perfect innings. We're still tied 0-0.
Is he pitching for them?
No, he's out. He's right fielder. He's
okay.
big, giant dude. 8 perfect innings. In the 9th inning, I walk the leadoff guy. They bunt. I pick it up, throw it up the first base line. I think probably strike out the next guy. Then Wilder comes up and hits kind of a CNI through the 3-4 hole. They score that run. I get the next 2 guys out. We lose 1-0. So this was back when newspapers still mattered.
Right.
Newspapers were writing about it, all the thing, you know. So fast forward, we go to play them at their place, right? So then every team has a scout and a cross-checker and like a regional, like there's...
It's packed. I mean, you've got more people there from the
there's
professional
more,
baseball than you do from
and
fans or family. Yeah.
And again, Cary, I hate Cary so much. We're playing them, and I'd been sick like the 2 days. I had a sinus infection, felt like garbage. And so at that point, they started batting Wilder leadoff because they just wanted more at-bats.
Oh, which they were ahead of the game.
He leads off a game, home run.
Off you?
Off of me.
Oh!
So I'm like, dang. So then his next, I think it was his second at-bat. I think I get him 0-2 or 1-2. And I start thinking, oh, I'm going to show him I got a changeup.
Uh-huh.
I don't have a changeup. But I'm sitting there thinking.
Never did, and you didn't ask me that.
And throw him a changeup, which is a slow fastball. Pow! Another home run.
So you got him drafted in the first round.
So, yes. So Paul Wilder still owes me like a couple $100,000. But he ended up having a lot of kind of back issues and got hurt. And I think maybe got up to AA for a little bit, but just a massive human being.
It's so hard, and I saw it later on, and I don't want you to continue, but from a mental standpoint for a high schooler to go from high school to professional baseball, it takes a pretty mature person. And I saw it as somebody that went through college and got drafted. I saw high school kids, and you're like, dude, you're just not. It wasn't physically ready, but mentally and emotionally ready. Yeah. It's a whole different story. So anyway, after you got beat by Cary twice,
So all right. So anyway, we
go through the season.
We go through the season, make the playoffs, end up losing in the 3rd round. Lost to Lee Senior, Lee County at the time, whatever it was. Mark Osborne was on that team.
Really
he ended up getting drafted in the 3rd round as a catcher by the Diamondbacks.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. That was the Diamondbacks and Devil Rays' first draft.
Oh wow!
It was their first draft. So Paul Wilder was their first ever pick.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And then Oz was the 3rd rounder for the Diamondbacks, and he was going to be my roommate at state. So they ended up being this.
So y'all had real good. Yeah,
we had a good recruiting class going into state, and so draft comes around, and so I found the Baseball America in the attic stairs. So Chris Benson on the cover, the consensus #1 pick, and he was from Clemson.
Yeah, and he obviously made it.
And he had a good career with the Mets and Pirates, and but drafted by the Pirates. So in this edition of Baseball America, I was rated as the #2 prospect out of North Carolina, behind Corey Lee, who was from NC State.
Yep.
But they did the top 100 picks, or top 100 kind of projected, and I was 44th.
Got you. So you thought
so I was 44th,
3rd round,
and then which would have been early-ish 2nd round because you got your compensation.
That's right. You got
And then the little note that they had was like, could jump into the 1st round, right? So I'm sitting here thinking,
1st round.
First round, 2nd round.
They were still. So how much money was being given out then? I'm trying to remember.
So the draft was really funky that year, right? So 1st round was typically 1.2 to 1.5.
So you thought legitimately, hey,
in that range.
I'm gonna be a
I
millionaire.
think Wilder made 975
Right.
late first. So it was, and then 500, 600s in the second and third round.
Yeah.
So a lot of money.
Yeah.
But so the draft comes around, and I'm thinking, hey, I'm gonna be a second rounder, maybe a third rounder at the
Get 5 to 800,000.
And so, but the draft, there was no internet, or a very rudimentary, very early internet. So, but it wasn't streaming. There was no TV. There wasn't the NFL and NBA draft did, but nobody cared about the Major League Baseball draft.
Right. They try to make it. Yeah, they make it into.
And they've made it into kind of an event now, but it's taken 25, 30 years.
That's right.
So I had an agent, and so he's kind of communicating with us during the day. I guess technically an advisor at the time, but became an agent.
How close were you to, and you can kind of get into this, but like to staying versus, and when I say staying, going to North Carolina State, or going and signing, was there ever any doubt once you were drafted?
So the draft's going on, and we're getting phone calls, and we hear like, oh, Paul Wilder got drafted in the first round, and I'm ticked, like, because
that's kind of your rival.
He's my guy, my rival, and
a friend,
outside of those couple games, like I kind of owned him. Like I'd thrown really well against him. I mean, he got a few hits, but for the most part, I did pretty well against him. But the two games when it mattered most,
right, when guys were watching,
and so then you start hearing other stuff like, oh, Oz is a third rounder. Another guy, Brent Butler, who I played with, third rounder, and so now I'm like, what's going on, man? Like, and so then the Brewers call, and they're like, hey, we just took you in the 6th round. And I'm like deflated. Oh yeah. Like I'd been reading, my head was this freaking big. I had been reading about myself in Baseball America, like the Bible for baseball nerds.
Yeah.
I'd had all these scouts all this time. I'd been
a lot of attention. Yeah.
All this stuff. And I don't think I was like an egomaniac,
but you were definitely.
But my expectation
the confidence was good.
Yeah, my expectation was.
But you definitely weren't thinking falling below the 4th round.
No,
right? I mean,
no, not at all.
Do you think it was how you answered that one question? As far as looking at the painting, you should have looked at the guy's fight. Did you ever get any idea like why you felt like
I heard some stuff. I'll save it for another time, but yeah. So anywho, so 6th round. So I was, if I was like first, second, third round, I was locked. I was gone. Yeah. Like done. Right. I was gonna. Yeah. So 6th round, I'm like, God, what the heck is this? Yeah. And so I go up to Ohio. I'm playing summer ball for a team in Ohio, the Warhawks. Amazing team, amazing program, right? So I'm up there playing and living up there. And so, talking with my agent, he's talking to the Brewers and talking to my parents. And but I come back to North Carolina. We're playing a tournament so it's between like Raleigh and Chapel Hill and Duke. They're Raleigh, NC State.
Like a Legion ball type?
No, so this was like a travel ball team.
Oh, so already, back in the day.
It was kind of early travel ball. And so we come to Raleigh for a tournament. And so Coach Ray Tanner, calls me into his office and says, hey, Paul, want to kind of, congratulations on the draft and want to kind of hear what you're thinking. I'm like, I don't know, Coach Tanner. This is, because he thought, I think he kind of fully anticipated I was gone. Yeah. And then he goes, well, I got some news. So Coach Toman, who was his assistant at the time, Coach Toman and I, we're leaving for South Carolina. The University of South Carolina has made us an offer. They're going to invest more money, resources, everything. And he goes, we want you to come with us. We're going to give you a full ride. I was going to be kind of like a cornerstone, like a building block. Yeah. But I'm like, I knew nothing about South Carolina. I went to Clemson for a visit and didn't care for it. I was like, hey,
and you grew up an NC State fan.
I grew up around here. Yeah. Right? And I thought Clemson, I was like, yeah, South Carolina. Clemson's like 4.5 hours. So I'm like, where are we going? Like, how is it so far away? It's in South Carolina. So I knew nothing about South Carolina. I knew nothing about Columbia. And then he goes, well, you would have to sit out your freshman year because at the time it was considered a transfer because I'd already
signed your letter,
signed for classes or whatever it was. And so again, in my mind, I'm like, I was going to be ACC all freshman, and all freshmen, all
Freshman
American.
All-American. Yeah.
Like that's my mindset, and then so that was really the catalyst to say. So then I really pushed with my agent. I was like, hey, can we get some more money? And then the Brewers made.
So Avent never called you.
He didn't. He wasn't
hadn't
there
had
yet.
the job yet.
He didn't have the
Yeah.
job. So Coach Avent, he hadn't had a chance. So the Brewers at the time, their first offer to me was $200,000, which was legitimately like kind of like second, third round money at the time.
So that was still considered pretty good.
So it was good money. Back in 1996, man.
I mean, it's still good money now. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I wish
And
somebody
then,
would give me
and so then I asked my agent, hey, what else can we? So their next offer was $275,000,
which is better for sure.
Yeah. I said, all right, let's do this. So signed, off to rookie ball.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I wonder if Avent could have talked to you if you'd ended up at NC State and we could have crossed paths and played together.
We could have been teammates.
Yeah,
could have
dude.
been teammates.
I mean, you obviously were a young guy as far as when you graduated high school. Graduated high school at 17.
17, yeah.
Yeah. So my story on that is obviously go to NC State.
So did you play as a freshman?
Yeah. I went back and I was having to remember. I think our first game was against like North Carolina A&T.
Okay.
I was playing right field. I remember first at bat, adrenaline is rolling, rolling. I mean, it's rolling. And you know, you talk about sometimes you can't tell whether you're nervous, scared, or just really excited. But I remember being in the box, and my hands. I'm not Ken Griffey Jr. My hands were just like shaking, just moving. And I was just, and we're playing against A&T, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's nobody. And
where were you in the lineup?
I think I hit leadoff first.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I went back and I was looking, and I did not recall this. I was somewhere, and I had a couple of games that I set here and there my freshman year, but or come in and get a pitch hit or something.
Yeah.
But I hit like somewhere between 1 and 5 most of the year.
Oh, wow.
And mostly 1 or 5. It wasn't a whole lot of 2, 3, 4, but the grounded out to shortstop. I was 1 for 3 my first debut game, and obviously I had some really good games, but it was, you know, my elbow was still jacked, and I knew it. Right, I still couldn't extend through balls. But I had enough hand-eye coordination that I could get by. Yeah. Obviously, the bats were much better than our kids use now at 12 years old, 13 years old. And we weren't using wood, what you were throwing against, and were having to use as a professional. But, you know, I was a freshman All-American. I think maybe like I don't think I was all ACC or anything, but I was a freshman All-American. Played a lot of right field. Lost some games. Because
your D WAR was terrible.
Oh, my WAR was negative for sure. And if I'd have been in a bigger market today, they would probably booed me out of some places. It's hard for me to get over how we kind of treat, you know, 18, 19-year-old kids, right? Because I can remember being that kid, and I remember being at Duke, and I lost the game at Duke dropping a fly ball in right field. And
just dropping it?
I mean, it was one of those ones where a righty hit it and it's tailing away from you. Yeah. But it's got to be caught. And so lost the game, get on the bus, you feel like the biggest loser. You know, so there were some ups and downs. Obviously, I transitioned away from any infield position. They didn't want me anywhere close to that. So,
because you could run a little bit,
I could run okay. 6'7", 6'8" guy then. Yeah. I think eventually 6'7" was what eventually got me drafted. But so first year, I would have to look back at my stats. I think I was 340 some with like 5 or 6 home runs, like 6 home runs. My sophomore year, I was like. No, freshman year was 366, 6 home runs. Sophomore year was 340, I think, with like 10 or 11 home runs. And then my junior year was, you know, somewhere in those same ranges. But I eventually had elbow surgery after my junior year. I went up into the Cape in between, played at Harwich one year. Okay. Again, when your elbow won't extend through balls, and again, my arm was poo, right? I went from being a pretty good arm guy to it never getting back right.
Oh, wow.
And so I eventually just essentially became a left fielder. Whenever I had some really good guys help me. Yeah. And one of the guys who helped me, obviously Billy Best was one of those guys, and then Billy Jones who came in. Billy Jones ended up coaching at Oklahoma State for a long time. He was a coach at App State for a minute. I'm not even sure what he's doing now, but, you know, he really believed in me. And I think sometimes when you see that belief from other people, it helps, right?
Yeah.
And I was always a hitter, but I was really a tool a two-tool guy, right? I could hit for average and hit for power, defense below average, arm below average, speed maybe average, yeah, for an outfielder. And so I wasn't really anything dynamic. I was kind of a two-tool guy, and whenever I got into but I did perform, right? All ACC my sophomore, junior, senior year. My senior year hit 418, like 14 home runs, and I was one of those guys where I think Oakland had backed a lot of like first round picks through. They always giving away guys and what's it called? Supplemental picks.
Supplemental picks,
they had like 6 or 8 in like the first 2 rounds, and so they love high school kids because they could push them up really. Or I'm sorry, college kids,
guys,
so they could push them up real quick. And
well, and that was because you were the 02 draft, and that was right in the heart of the money ball.
The money ball, and I was a walk guy. I would have to go back and look at stats, but I'm pretty sure, my senior, I was above, 500 as far as on base percentage, and even my other years were pretty good. And really, the only reason I hadn't done that earlier is my elbow hurt so bad. At least after I had surgery, the pain was less, and I could never extend through balls, but at least the pain was less. And my junior year, I ended up having 2 surgeries. So first surgery come in, they thought I'd had like my flexor tendon was compressed, and that's the reason I was having nerve pain in my pinky and ring finger.
That's why you're so bad at writing.
Yeah, well, I was bad, and my kids have genetically it's went through them. They're not very good either. My girls are pretty good, but boy, not great. And so I'm going through that rehab in like September, October, and my freaking trainer's like, "Oh, you're having phantom pains." I'm like, "I'm not having phantom pains.
I feel it.
Phantom pain." He's like, "No, this is phantom pains." I'm like, "Dude, I need a second opinion." I've finally grown enough as a person to stand up for yourself, right?
Yeah.
And that's really what you got to do in minor league ball too. You got to be a guy that's going to stand up for themselves. And I finally kind of developed into that a little bit, and it's like, no, I need to go see somebody else. So I ended up having a second surgery. That guy tells me I have an elbow of like a 65-year-old. I'm 22 years old. He's like, you have arthritis and you have the bone kind of structure of like a 65-year-old. That's what he said.
Oh,
now, that stuff was never disclosed, obviously. Because you wouldn't have been drafted.
It's the famous R.A. Dickey story with the bent elbow on the cover of Baseball America.
That's exactly right. That's it. And so he was ended up having his second surgery right before the season started. So my junior year, I mean, literally, I had surgery in like January, and I was playing February, and a very tough year. I think I hit 340, like 10, 11 home runs. So it was a solid year. And then my senior year, the pain was completely gone.
Oh, wow. Good.
Not completely gone, but the pain was manageable.
Yeah.
I mean, I took a lot of ibuprofen throughout my career. And whether it be after my junior year when I got hurt, it was, I lived on ibuprofen.
So did you think like, so your dream was to play professionally, play in the big
leagues?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it was.
So did you think after the surgery, you're like, crap, this might not?
No, I thought if they can get me a little bit better, I can perform a lot better. I was a little bit ignorant, arrogant, to the point where I felt like I was as good a hitter as anybody.
Yeah. Well, you have to. That's how you have to. You have to have that belief.
Yeah, I mean, again, I thought it didn't matter who you were on the mound. I thought I was getting a hit off of you. I mean, it was never felt like overpowered, necessarily from that standpoint. It was just I never felt healthy completely. Yeah. And from being a 5-tool guy, because that's all I heard. Hey, the only thing he's ever going to be able to do is DH, right? And and honestly, my outfield skills,
you'd have fit perfect with those.
I felt like I would have. And so, anyway, did not get a call from those guys. I can remember my roommate had it pulled up on the computer, so we had developed computer technology about 2002, and they had the draft going on the computer. And I had gotten a very wide range from like Oakland getting me one of those supplemental picks, like early first, second round, or late first round,
early second,
and one of the supplemental picks, to the Diamondbacks, to I remember filling out stuff for Brewers. I remember filling out stuff for a lot of different people.
Yeah.
For Cleveland, obviously, and then get the message that I got drafted in the 7th round with Cleveland. Hey, Cleveland drafts Brian Wright, outfielder from North Carolina State University, and it's one of those things. I was kind of disappointed too, bro. I can remember because I'd had so many conversations, and it made even I understood at the point what Oakland was trying to do. I felt like I would have fit in. I was kind of disappointed too because that was kind of where that made sense. And I think I was a senior, obviously, at this point.
So you had way less.
I had no leverage.
Yeah.
I think the 6th round guy for Cleveland got, I don't know, $90,000, or maybe I may have it backwards. And then the 8th round guy, I think the 6th round guy may have got 125, and then the 8th round guy got 90, or maybe the 6th round guy got 90, and the 8th round guy got like 75. But me, being the master negotiator as a senior, 7th round guy got 22.5. 22,500. I was rich, and I was pumped. Felt like, I could buy me a used car. Might have been beat up through college, and that kind of experience where you don't watch it for 4 years.
Wait, so
there's
no agent, no.
I did not have no agent. No, I didn't have any agent at that point, dude. I'm negotiating with Cleveland directly. It's just I'm like,
look, I took a class.
Right. I mean,
I took a class. I was at State. I've been here 4 years.
I thought, I don't know. I'd had some people reach out, but I didn't feel like, I don't know. I was pretty ignorant and arrogant to that too. It didn't. I probably could have done better, honestly, with an agent.
You probably got 50.
Probably could have got $50,000 as a senior, but I got 22.5.
But again, you're no leverage.
No leverage.
Yeah,
no.
Like, what are you going to do? Like, where are you going to
go play independent ball? I think that's what J.D. Drew maybe did, or maybe the brother did.
So I mentioned the '96 draft, right? So there was a few guys in that draft, and the one that was kind of the most famous case, Matt White. So Matt White was one of these can't miss prospects, big right-hander, mid-90s fastball, off the table curveball. So he was drafted by the Giants, and so Scott Boras was his agent, and Boras represented a few other guys.
So he
and
was
so
dominant.
So what happened though was Boras found a loophole where there's some rule in the Major League Baseball bylaws. You have to tender an offer to a player within, it was like 10 days or 14 days. Like you had to make at least one financial offer. And so they waited and they waited and they waited. And they did not make an offer. And so Boras says, hey, here's the rule. My guy's a free agent. So Matt White became a free agent and signed for like $10 million.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And so I ended up meeting Whitey, like, fast forward to 2004, I'm at camp with the Rays and I meet him. Just a great human being, solid individual. Right. Again, if you got $10 million in the bank, you
feel like you're probably a better person.
Probably a little easier to do some things.
Person.
But really, really nice guy. I think he liked poker, so you had like poker nights at his place and invited guys over, but just very generous, very, very, and even humble, right? Like good dude. But never made the big leagues.
I didn't think he did.
But had injuries, couldn't stay healthy for whatever reason. But good dude. 96 draft, really interesting. Really interesting to research, and the 02 draft. Last one. Who was the number one pick in the 02 draft? Do you remember?
I should know, dude. I don't even know. I don't even know.
We'll do some research.
All right, we'll put it up there, Paul. I'll get Paul to put it in.
We'll find it. So thank you all for listening today. We appreciate it. So check us out on Instagram, Wright Stew Podcast. We got a YouTube channel going up.
You can look at our pretty faces while we do it.
Look at that. So we'll be on there. It's Wright Stew Pod, Wright Stew Podcast on YouTube as well. So we'll have some content posted on there. Continue subscribing and downloading the episodes on wherever you find podcasts. And we appreciate you guys listening. Hope you enjoy this, and more to come in the future.
All right, go Pack.